Adam, thank you for joining us for our inaugural Cafe Stareable.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. It's really an honor to be here.
Before we get started, we'd love to have you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your project.
My name is Adam Greydon Reid. I produced, created, directed, wrote, and edited a digital series called Hospital Show. And Hospital Show is about the broken, deluded, lovable actors who play TV's most respected doctors. That's basically it. It centers around Charlie, this one character who was almost a doctor. She was a med school dropout and now finds herself pretending to be one on TV. So it's a bit of a crisis of an identity crisis going on as well.
And it's incredibly funny. I will vouch for that. So you were an official selection at Stareable Fest 2020. You mind talking a little bit about how that experience was?
I mean, going into these virtual festivals, it was a little bit daunting. I mean, literally, we were up in one. We were nominated. We won. I was actually online, but I couldn't. They didn't see me, and I couldn't accept the thing. And it was a bit fumbly. But when Stareable came along, it was like a whole other. It was 180 degrees different. You guys were absolutely the best online virtual festival that I had experienced, that I've ever experienced. But it was amazing that what you were able to mobilize in such a short amount of time. Because it wasn't just me. Everyone who experienced, like all the creators who I spoke to afterwards, everyone said, "Oh, Stareable was the best. Stareable was the best." And that's huge. It's so important. It made the experience just so pleasurable. You guys had like meeting rooms where people could actually see each other, like little rooms where you could see like multiple, basically walk around a virtual party. You had Q&A sessions that we did, and then we had live, people asking questions that were in the audience, in quotes. You also set up meetings, industry meetings with us. So I took 3 meetings. And then of course the virtual awards show. I mean, it was really, it was a spectacular experience. And I'm not saying that I went and ran and got this award because we also won the best short form comedy. And it isn't just because of this. It was from start to finish. I mean, this was wonderful. It's a beautiful award, but the whole experience was just fantastic.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear that you had a good experience, because it was definitely, it was a journey of reinvention last year.
Yeah.
But it's great to hear that we stuck the landing.
Really did. You superseded expectations.
So one of the things that we put a lot of focus on at the festival is this industry marketplace. We feel like there's this huge gap between these incredibly talented digital creators, web series creators, and industry that are hungry for new voices, new IP, new talent, but are continuing to search for it in the same old ways, right? And so for us, there seems to be this huge opportunity about, well, how can we connect these creators to industry executives, agents, managers? You mentioned you took meetings. Who did you meet with? How did that go?
The highlight for me was I met with 3 people, and it was just good to chat with a couple of different people that, or maybe it was just 2 people. Definitely, it was definitely 2. Could have been 3. And I forget who 2 of them were. They were. It was informative. It was great. It was a good meet and greet. We've kept the connection. I will make sure that to reconnect some other time. But because it wasn't a fit, I didn't continue the dialogue right away. Because it's the short form world is. It's very fluid, and so it like some people are looking for TikTok style 15-second, 30-second things, or more magazine style things, and they're not really looking for narrative, and so there's a lot of different things that people are looking for. So you may not fit with necessarily every single person, but it's still great to talk to them and meet people. I did meet with Jason Newman at Untitled, who has taken over their digital department. They now have Untitled is a huge A-list agency or management company in in the States, and they have a digital division, and Jason is in charge of that. And Jason really responded to the series, and we probably spoke at least 4 times. We ended up having several Zooms. He wanted to connect with my co-producer in Canada, and things are still circling there. Like nothing has sort of settled yet, but his degree of interest right there and where we took the conversation has shown me how beneficial those types of things were. And both of us were grateful. Like Jason was like, I'm really thankful to Stareable for setting me up with you, because it's been great. Like the fact that he was exposed to my material and I was exposed to him, was really wonderful. And we're still kind of, we're still in touch.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so, how do these conversations progress? Like, what do potential next steps look like? Like,
well, for me, I mean, the whole point of Hospital Show was basically for me to create a job for myself and my friends. I wanted to create something that could be a long-term project. I wanted to develop this. I wanted to sort of shoot my own pilot with the intention of creating a longer form series from that. I saw the digital series as a pilot project, as a proof of concept. So that's what it has always been for me. It doesn't have to be, though. Like there is a market for short form content. There are buyers for short form content. Unfortunately, not Quibi anymore. But that exists. But for me, it was always that. So how the dialogue or the conversation would continue would be, how can we help? Like for the management company, how can we, if we want to be involved, how can we help package this project? Do we have one person in particular that say could come on board to produce or co-produce, or do we have a director that is interested in working with you, or do we have a star that could come on, or several actors that could come on? So that's where a dialogue like that could go. I think ultimately, probably to get most things actually made now, you need some packaging of some kind, and so a management company or an agency is a critical key in that step.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes it. Sorry, go ahead.
I said it's a critical step. I meant a critical step in that process.
Yeah, I think that's a smart way to think about it. Is that this is kind of a stepping stone to bringing on talent or showrunner, or taking this concept and thinking about it in a long form sort of way. Especially if that's the goal, that this was meant to be a pilot in kind of a longer series.
And then of course, it not only did that for me, but it's attracted other people that say have their own projects that wanted to attach me. I'm now working with 2 very talented writers on another project that basically we connected because of Hospital Show. Oh,
that's fantastic. And how did that process go?
Well, I mean, I did know one of the writers. She's an old friend, but I mean, when we reconnected, it was like she watched the series and then her writing partner watched the series. And then it was like, well, how can we work together? And then I looked at their script, and then I started working with them on their script. And then I was able to, work with them to help as a creative producer, basically. And my goal for them as well was I wanted to help pitch it. So that's what we're doing now with that series. But again, none of that, I don't think that would have happened in the same way or unfolded in the same way had I not had this proof of concept that, whether or not it's not necessary. What I'm saying is it's not, when you make something like this, it isn't necessarily just for a buyer. It could be to help you meet new creative people that you can partner with that have nothing to do with, the project that you've made, but that want to work with you in some way.
Totally. I think that's exactly right. That, I think one assumes that things in life are linear, and they so rarely are. And especially in television, that idea of packaging makes everything nonlinear, right? It's about figuring out these different pieces and getting from one stepping stone to the next, and having that unlock doors, and having then new conversations about what's possible. So it's as we're hearing in a number of these conversations we're doing with creators, it's a long game, right? It's about this being specific about your idea and your voice and your tone, but being malleable in terms of who the partners could be or where the eventual home could be.
Absolutely. And I mean, another perfect example, I ended up partnering with this company called Blue Ant before the pandemic hit. But I met with like everybody wanted to meet about this project because they saw the series. Like I think it's very hard nowadays to, there's so much more on paper that people have to read. So if you have something that has been produced, that you've produced, and it's high quality, that really opens doors. It opened doors for me because people were I find much more willing to see something and watch something than they are necessarily to read something. And certainly they can, as soon as you see Hospital Show, you get it. So if there was ever any hesitation of like, oh, I don't know how these characters are going to work together, or whatever, behind the scenes, does that work? Because there's seems like always hesitation around behind the scenes shows. And my whole point about making the show or this series was a behind the scenes show ultimately is a workplace comedy. Like this show is just about people who wear white coats and pretend to be doctors for a living. They're just like you and me. And the reason why I wanted to make the series was to show how relatable it could be. And I think that when people see it, they get that. I literally went back to the same people, one very big company that has arms sort of around the world, and they didn't remember reading the script. They wanted to partner on the show because they saw the series, and they were like, we didn't get the script. I'm like, yes, you did. But they didn't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about this idea of web series. It's that even in an industry that's so full of creative people that are trying to imagine what things could be, it helps build a fuller sense of the universe, right?
Yeah.
And it helps de-risk what a project could be. And I think those are just key elements of sales in certain ways that, as you're trying to bring on partners and potential distributors and the rest, that it's about convincing them of, the value of what you've created, and for them to be able to see it is, I think, so much more palpable.
Absolutely, and tangible, absolutely. And also when you get that project out in front of other eyes and you get feedback and you have actual audience feedback, like real people saying, oh my God, I can't wait for season 2, or I love this show. I look forward to watching it every week because we released it and we staggered the release. Or the awards that you win. I mean, all of this matters when you're pitching an idea. So yeah, I'm so grateful that I was able to produce this through the funding agencies that exist here in Canada.
And so that packaging process, that I think can be very opaque for creators that haven't had that sort of experience before, haven't had that opportunity. How does that actually work in practice?
You mean the funding process for?
No, so you mentioned that you have this pilot and you are talking to Untitled, you're talking to other places about bringing in talent and potential showrunners and the rest. Like, how does that actually work in practice? Where do those conversations go? Is it, are they linear? Are they happening in parallel? Are there evolutions that you're making in terms of like how you think about the show as you have these conversations?
Yeah. I mean, well, the first thing I think, when you have a digital series, something that I had produced, or that any of your official nominees produced. For example, I know several of the Canadian ones, the Canadian producers have done similar things. They've partnered with production companies, and they have a distribution deal that are helping them get that content out into the greater world. For example, I know I believe it's How to Buy a Baby has now Warner Brothers, or there was at least, I think it's Warner Brothers that is helping them distribute that, and they, as a result, sold the show to somewhere in Scandinavia. So they're making the show as an original series.
Wow.
Somewhere in Europe, exactly. So that's the kind of thing that can happen when you go, purely the short form route and you just try to sell the short form series. And then, I'm sure that the producer of that series wasn't necessarily thinking that her show would end up in, somewhere in wherever in Scandinavia,
right.
Produced in that language. But that just goes to show you how circuitous the route can be. And you, as you say, you can't necessarily predict it. I mean, so what I did is fairly standard in terms of you've got a project. In our case, we had a web series that had a big following and had good numbers. So I was able to, say that the show is well loved. Here's our viewerships. Here's some of our data and analytics that we've captured. I think that's a big thing. When you have a digital series, you can actually see the audience and convey who the audience is. And so, and I just sent the series out to I have an agent, and she sent the series out to production companies that we thought this would be a good fit at. And then from there, I got a bunch of meetings. And so, it was like I spent a week in Toronto just taking meetings. And I think I met 2 people a day, 2 companies a day. And the first people I met were the people that were the fastest to move, and that was Blue Ant. And Blue Ant, the people there, led by Melissa Williamson, who's a wonderful producer. She was really aggressively interested in the series, and we really hit it off. And so I did meet with everyone, and had interest from other people, and I also connected with other people. But in the end, went with the people that I met first. So that's generally what happens. You have a series of meetings. You put the thing out there. Your agent or you put it out there. You get a series of meetings. You meet these people, and then you decide who you're going to go with. And then once you have that company that you've partnered with. In my case, in Canada, there are also government agencies set up to help to finance certain parts of the development. So for us, we went to one of those agencies called the CMF, which is the Canadian Media Fund, and they helped to Blue Ant and the CMF co-financed funding for me to write the pilot of a half-hour series. So I wrote the half-hour version, but I was financed. It was funded. So that so whether or not you're funded for it or not, you still need to take it to the next step, which is, okay, this is a web series, but what does it look like as a 34-page script? And that's the next stage, whether it's funded and you're paid for it or not, you do need to take that next step if that's where you want to go. So for me, I was very fortunate enough to have that step financed. So I was paid to do that. And I continued, though. I've written a second script on spec. So now we've got a first episode and a second episode of Hospital Show ready. And in the meantime, Melissa is sending it out to either studios or production companies to start off with, to see if there's interest. And we've had interest in the series itself, but then, this isn't quite, when they get the script, it's like, this is great, but not exactly what we're looking for. But we actually we've just begun to shop it. So we actually haven't been, we haven't really, tested the market too much yet. But that's what's happening. So really we're in the follow-up stage where once you've sent out the material, or at least that first bit of material, which is the series itself, now we're following up with those studios and whoever, those production companies, to say, hey, did you see it? Did you like it? And that can take like months, to wait for feedback. And then once you get that feedback, the next step is you send them the scripts. And then you see if there's a fit.
Gotcha. So the project right now it sounds like it's been set up at Blue Ant for a while, and you're basically looking for production partners or potential homes for the show.
We're looking for someone, a studio perhaps, or a production company in the States who have a good reputation with some of the networks, to take it to some of the networks or subscription services, or we'll take it directly to some subscription services. But right now we're in the stage of, it took us about 8 months to get the CMF funding, and then like basically I took one direction with the script, and that alone took 3 or 4 months, and now that's become my episode 2 instead of the pilot. So then I had to rewrite the pilot, and the pilot was sort of more based on kind of taking some of the stories from the web series, but then kind of encapsulating them more and kind of creating a beginning, middle, and end. So the first, I signed on with them last May. So the first big chunk of time is just developing it, with them, putting a pitch package together, and then the script. And we really only finished the script in February.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the pilot. So it really hasn't been pitched too much, but we've talked to some Canadian broadcasters, and they're looking at the pilot script now. So we're really right now in just the first stages of putting the project out there.
That's amazing. Well, best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Is this your first web series? Have you done other, kind of indie episodic, digital episodic projects before?
No, I have not. It's my very first.
And what pushed you into the space? What pulled you?
I think what pushed me into the space was having the confidence that I needed technically to do it. So I think it was really just, I felt like I'd graduated in a certain way in terms of my skills, both just my writing skills and my directing skills. I feel like it's taken me, to the middle of my career, into my 40s, to feel like I could do something completely on my own. It's interesting because this is what I did in film school, but it's taken me, many years just to build up the confidence and working for others to finally say, okay, I'm ready to do my own thing again. And so for me, this process was about rediscovering my voice and having the confidence to listen to myself and put something out there that was authentically mine. Now, some people have that confidence right away, if they go to school for it and they come out of school and they're like, I'm going to make a feature, whatever they do. I was looking for more safety, and I wanted to, work with others, and I wanted it to be my job. And so it's taken a while for me to say, no, you know what, I think I want to, develop this. And then the other thing that nudged me, forward was having written what appeared to be was sort of like a pilot for the show and begun to pitch it. I realized that it was actually kind of hard to convey everything that I had in my mind as to what this would look like when it was up on the screen. So then I thought, okay, you know what? I'm not going to pitch Hospital Show as a script. I need to find a way to make it. And then I found out about these web series grants that the Bell Fund has and that the Independent Production Fund has in Canada, and they're significant. But I think they're more geared to mid-career artists because it takes a lot to put together, like with a budget. Like they are really nice, they offer a substantial amount of funding, but with that comes a whole, it's a whole Pandora's box of things that you could never have possibly expected. I'm still working on wrapping up the accounting for the digital series, which was released in 2019.
Yep.
So it's a massive. So we were able to finance or get about 400. So 350,000 was the budget, and then we were able to get an extra 50,000 for marketing, which is huge. I know that so many of the Americans are like, "Oh, you're so lucky."
Yeah.
It's very hard to get all that funding in place. It took me a year alone just to get the funding, and I'm still working on it. So it did provide me with a lot of freedom, but it also came with a huge learning process and a lot of me basically turning to people that I wasn't necessarily, best friends with or anything, just acquaintances, and saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And so all along the way, because I didn't know how to produce something that with that kind of budget. So I learned as I went. So again, that comes with maturity and confidence, and I think I was ready to take on a project like this now. Yeah, I think that sort of answers. What was your original question on that? Sorry.
Had you done anything in the web series?
Yeah, and then so the other reason why I did it was, I think, again, I wanted to, rather than just write about this concept, I was like, I just want to I want to show it. I don't want to pitch this in a traditional way. So I was looking for a creative process where I could be really true and authentic to myself, and kind of rediscover my voice and create something that only I had the final say over, which is really empowering. And I really was craving doing that because I work in the advertising industry. So it was a really important project in that sense for me, was just to do something just for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second aspect of it was, I found that I thought that it would be a better way to pitch the series than just to do it with a script.
Well, and so far it seems like it was absolutely the right decision.
For sure, yeah.
Do you see yourself staying kind of in this episodic indie digital space? Like, what are your thoughts about it now that you are 2 years deep and have one project under your belt?
I think I would return to this space if, for one reason or another, because there's many, many reasons why things, either go or don't go. My intention is to take it to another level, so that I'm not kind of cobbling it together, because it was a big endeavor to make. And again, it's not because it required that budget. I could not have made Hospital Show and rented that location and all the equipment that needed to go. I built a hospital. You can't do that with $10,000. So I needed that amount of money to make what we made. So I think I would only do it if further down the line I was like, you know what, we never made it into something, like it never made it the leap into the half-hour world, and I still want to continue these stories. So I might consider it like, several years down the road, as a kind of a fun creative process to revisit, just to get that gang back. But otherwise, my goal is to see it through as a half-hour series. I'd like to see that first happen.
Got it.
Before I venture back into this indie world, or maybe I would, I could reconsider venturing back into this indie world with another project, perhaps something completely fresh. But I probably wouldn't set it in a location that required like a lot of, the kind of production design that
yeah, I could imagine.
I would simplify the concept. Hopefully.
So that actually brings me to my last question. So, it sounds like you've learned a tremendous amount from this experience, and, taking your project out there, revisiting it from a script to a video, to having these indie conversations, to thinking about what the production or the set should look like. When you think about advice for other creators that are thinking about the exact same things, how do they take their career to the next level? How do they take ownership over a project? How do they sell someone in the industry on this this idea that they have nagging in the back of their head? Like, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I would say that if you don't have access to financing, then I would definitely keep the concept. I would make sure that it's a concept that you can tell in a simple way. There's lots of examples of series. High Maintenance comes to mind, where they knew that they had access to their friends. They had the co-creator of that show is a casting director, and she had access, or she had been exposed to a lot of really great local, New York actors, and they knew all they needed was basically apartments and the streets of New York. So that's a great example of a series that was made probably in a fairly simple weekend kind of way. I think that's the story. You've spoken to them, right? And about the process behind that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. They were borrowing friends' apartments,
Yeah.
and Katya was in charge
Katya.
of casting at 30 Rock and had a long
Yeah.
background in New York City, and was pulling from their community. And I think that show is a great example of what you can do, kind of with an incredible idea and incredible execution and scraps for a budget.
That's right.
So.
Yeah, so I think that's the main thing is look at your resources, right? Like, what do I have access to? In Katya's case, it was, well, great actors, and that's really all they really needed, other than friends' apartments and the streets, which they just sort of, I don't imagine they got permits. They just followed people around, and they just kind of went and did it. So, but if you can get financing together, certainly if you're Canadian, Australia, I believe Australia has some of these same types of grants in place. Sky's the limit. Like, I honestly, I wasn't, our concept is very big, in terms of making a small digital, a web series, setting it in a hospital with equipment and doctors and extras, and that's a pretty big concept, but we pulled it off. So I believe you can pull off anything that you set your mind to, especially if you can find that financing. So on one hand, I would say don't limit yourself. On the other hand, I mean, if you don't have access to that financing or that funding, then you have to you've got to be a little bit more, you've got to think about what's at your disposal, and just go and do it. It's something that I absolutely don't regret. Lots of sleepless nights, lots of stress, but it's been such an amazing experience. The making of it and the process of putting it together with friends, because none of us were paid. We did, all the actors did it on basically for what I think it was 50% of scale. So there was a budget for the talent, but we pretty much all did it, because we loved the project, so it's important to do these types of these kinds of creative projects which don't involve a network or some other kind of larger body other than just a group of creative people. I think it's really important. I think probably maybe more challenging now because of the pandemic, but once we hopefully get a handle on this, we'll be able to make these kinds of independent projects again with more ease, because I think it's really important to make them yourself or support others who are making them. They're the most fulfilling, ultimately, right? When you do these types of things, everyone comes back to, oh, it was so fun. I just want to do more.
Yep.
It's because artists know how to create the space for themselves to thrive. And when artists create those containers, and it isn't driven by, profit necessarily, it's driven by just an idea and camaraderie and doing something together, it almost always ends up that you have the best experience. You're I'm sure that there are some, wonderful experiences on big shows, I'm sure, but you do get a lot out of the process of just going out and making, and the opportunity to nowadays to have access to an audience, which we didn't have 15 years ago. It really has developed. It's come to a point now where you really can get your project out, and you really can find thousands of people to watch what you're doing, and you really can, create something. It may not be, you can make something that takes off and becomes viral, or you can, like our show, we have about 35,000 views per episode, but certain episodes we have way more, and certain parts of our content we have a lot of views on, like some of our ads and some of our shorter pieces. but like a lot of people, like I think on our channel overall, we've got close to 800,000 views. And these are real people that you can share your content with. It's really great. It's really, really freeing. And I recommend it to anyone, because it doesn't matter how hard it is to do. It will pay off. Even if it's just an internal payoff, it will pay off.
I love what you said. Artists know how to create the space for them to thrive in. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely true, especially when there's no motive, like no motive of greed behind because at the end of the day, we're all, when you're working for producers or networks and stuff, at the end of the day, it boils down to, we've got to get X amount of people to watch this in order for it to survive. And therefore, what's it going to take for those people to watch this? There's always going to be some other motivations coming into almost anything we do as a hired hand, or as a hired job, as a server of content. But making your own, yeah, it's generally it's a really important experience to experience. It's important to do at least once if you're a creator, to see what it's like. And I want to make something now. I'm actually kind of itching to make something else, but it'll be smaller, and I'm not going to go for funding. I just want to make some other sort of thing with friends, maybe a short.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you. This was great. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you join us for this inaugural Cafe Stareable. And I look forward. Stareable Fest 2021, knock on wood, will be in person. So we'd love to.
What do you think?
I'd love to see you in person in New York. Yeah, in October.
You think 2021?
It's October.
You think this October it will be in person? Maybe.
I'm optimistic we're all going to be vaccinated and we can travel, and it'll just be a question of if people want to. But I'd like to believe Stareable Fest is fun, and I think people want to get together and celebrate creativity and be a part of this professional thriving community that exists largely online right now, and celebrate over drinks and yeah.
Well, I think festivals will be up and running, and you may be lucky because you're coming closer to the end of the year. I wish you all the best and all the success. I would love to meet you in person someday. And I feel very grateful to have been a part of Stareable, virtual or not. It's been a real pleasure to be introduced to your community, to you, your staff, and to everybody that took part of Stareable this year. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you again for being part of this.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks, Ajay. Inspired you to do this, Ajay?
I absolutely love television. It's my favorite art form. And I, at this point, like 5 years ago, was struck by this idea of web series as essentially independent television, and started to watch all these shows and realized there's all this amazing content out there. Just the acting, the writing, the production quality. It's so incredible.
Yeah.
But there wasn't the same sort of infrastructure that existed with other forms of digital content, whether it was, blogs or influencers or esports. And so kind of the catalyst for Stareable was, well, how do we help get these creators and this content the attention and support and monetization that it deserves? And the company has kind of iterated steadily around that idea for the past couple of years. And the thing that's, I think, really resonated is that, similar to your story, creators want, web series creators, indie TV creators, they want to take this project that they've done, that they've sweated over, that they've scraped funding together for, that they've asked every favor possible for, and they want to put it in front of industry. They see this as a concept that should exist in a long form on a network. But if if you're coming from outside of the industry, you
Yeah.
have no idea how to get that conversation, right? You can't email it into a network or a studio. Agents and managers are impossible to get in front of and inundated. And like they are also very like inward looking, right? They're dealing with other members of this industry.
Yeah.
And so we started the festival as really, to try and figure out, okay, well, we have this incredible community of creators. We have this growing network within the industry. Maybe we can use the festival as kind of a way to mesh these two things together, right? And so that's why the marketplace has always been this big focus for us, because it's a way for us to make those conversations happen, right? In person, over Zoom, what have you. And the thing that we're really focused on this year is, okay, so we've done a lot of, I would say, hard work in terms of demonstrating that there's incredible talent out there, and that if you're in this industry, you should be open to these conversations, because you could turn this into real gold. And so now it's about, well, how do we scale this, right? So not just one time a year at the festival, but people are looking for projects and talent and IP around. So how can we act as that sort of connectivity and fabric year round? And so one of the things that we're going to be unveiling at this first Cafe Stareable is Stareable First Look, where essentially on a year-round basis, we're going to be sending projects and talent to some of our industry partners, specifically in the vein of they're looking for new concepts and new shows.
Great idea.
What better place to look than?
Feel free to take this anywhere.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No, I think you should. I think that's a great idea. Continue the conversations or create new conversations, and you can act as a kind of an agent in a way to at least in making the introductions to these new industry players that you may not, the creators may not have even be exposed to at the actual festival. But as you say, it can continue year round.
Yeah, I think that's what we're really building towards this year. And I think you're going to see over the next week, 2 weeks, month, 2 months, some really great announcements about, the partners that we're bringing in and the ways we're going to be acting as this connective fabric. So yeah, it's exciting. And I think it's exciting also because it speaks to the talent and the quality and the diversity of these creators, right? Ultimately, we are as strong as the projects and the creators that we work with. So it's really a testament to everyone that's putting all this hard work into making these amazing shows.
Well, you're onto something for sure, because I know of one studio. There are people, and including studios, looking specifically for short form to adapt. So it's happening. Yeah, it's happening.
Who do you feel comfortable saying?
No, because I'm not working with them. But I know it's I believe, no, I wouldn't want to have it recorded, but one of the studios anyway, I can tell you, is I mean, if it wasn't recorded, I can tell you, but one of the studios for sure I have heard are looking for short form content to adapt. So if I've heard that there's one looking for that, then there's others there, and I guarantee you other people will be interested. Other people, I mean, it's just a matter of time where they'll be like, oh wow, this is real. Like these concepts are not just, again, something on paper. They've been realized, and if they've been realized really well, then it becomes even easier to completely imagine.
Yeah,
I've heard some producers, like I heard a story that Lorne Michaels did. He's like, just show me the tape. I have no idea. I don't know him. But I have heard that certain people like just watching what's the tape, like, let's show me something. So I think it will become much more common to just say, oh wow, great, there's a short form thing done, great, let's see it. And if it stands up to the concept, again though, that's the trick. A lot of times you'll see a demo, like I've got, I've seen demos that are like, oh, I know what this could be, so it does have to, it's got to meet the quality of the concept. And I think that is the trick sometimes, when the budgets are low.
Well, and I think that's also, it goes back to the idea of packaging. So if you have a really strong voice, or you have a really strong actor, or a really strong concept, but the cinematography isn't great, well, that's fixable, right? And so I think that goes back to, okay, so what is this, but also what could it be? And what are the ways that we can bring in elements to help solve that?
Oh, for sure. But that requires imagination.
Yes.
And I think oftentimes if my gut instinct about the reaction of say a studio executive or a network executive or whatever would be, I think it would be more favorable if what they saw as a complete package, it worked.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that has to be the goal. And I think the technology is there more and more now for the types of cameras that we can use, then we can have access to. Many creators know a good camera person that they can ask. That camera person might already own their equipment. And the types of cameras we're using now are like, it isn't just, something that you buy. It's like, it's the cameras really bring, your project to life. So I think demos are starting to look better and better because the technology just keeps getting better and better. And therefore there's less excuses for it to not have something, that immediately engages visually. But you're right. Hopefully if the concept is there, sometimes you're right. It could just be that person is hilarious and it was shot on a phone. But I think in this world where it's like someone might spend 2 minutes watching something, it helps if the whole thing
for sure.
is somehow there. Yeah. But yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think what you guys are doing is really pioneering and groundbreaking. It's great to see, that you're on the ground level of this movement.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Okay, great.